Netzach is, notice you all kept going until you got here. Did anyone get tired on their way here? No, it was pretty easy to get here. Okay, but imagine it was a hot summer day and you walked from like Harnof or something. So if you just kept going and going and going for an hour walk from Harnof, let's say it was Shavuos. Anyone walked here on Shavuos? No one walked here on Shavuos. Okay, but Shavuos, people walk long distances to get to the Western Wall for sunrise on Shavuos. They'll walk from way the opposite side of the city, over an hour walk for many of them, just to make it here for sunrise, for the sunrise prayers at the Western Wall, which is right behind us. And that attribute is called Netzach. And that's, now we're in the leg, now we're down below the belt, so that's the right leg, is Netzach. And that's to be able to keep going. So, anyone here started something that takes many years to finish? Did you finish? So those who finished have a good, strong meat of Netzach. Those who didn't, not so strong. Then there's the left leg, which is called Hod. And Hod, oh, by the way, I'm going to go back to creation. God's constantly keeping things in check, and we're the recipient. The physical world's the recipient. God's flowing creation into existence via an eternal light. He's limiting it, that's Gevurah, with these parallel worlds that filter the light. Those are called the Oilamos. And the exact ratio of light to worlds that filter is always kept perfectly in Tiferes for us, Malchus, the recipient, to not get blown out by the light or frozen by too much filter. Certain places are highly filtered. Los Angeles is highly filtered. Yeah, people go to LA, like they go to LA with all the best intentions, and you find them a couple weeks later, they don't even smell Jewish anymore. Las Vegas has that same type of thing. And I've actually noticed, I mean, maybe I'm crazy, but I've noticed that when I fly from LA to New York, I sense less filters. When I fly from New York to Europe, I sense even less filters. And then I get to Israel, and it's like the filters are gone. And I feel this natural progression towards God when I'm here. It seems just natural to me. Which kind of explains why a lot of my secular friends are so unnatural. You know, I had these great people in class yesterday. There was a couple sitting right behind these cameras, and the guy was like, it was a couple, and the guy was, you know, had really developed his mind quite a bit because of his contentions with God. While his partner, this woman there, was just kind of nodding away. She was so receptive the entire time. She was a smart girl, and we were talking on a pretty high level yesterday, and she was smart, and she was getting it, and she was receptive. And I said to them afterwards, I see, you know, that you're not Jewish. And she said, how did you know? And I said, because you were so receptive. You don't have anything to lose. By God being real, you had nothing to lose. You had only to gain. Whereas your boyfriend, you know, for me to be right about that discussion had major implications for him. And so what happens if you live in a country where God is the default mode, you know, Israel, where God's the default mode, but you're hell-bent on staying secular. So then your whole life's going to be a little weird, because you're gonna be this reaction to the very environment you're in. It's a little different than, see, when I meet a secular New Yorker who doesn't spend time here, yeah, some kid who grew up in Manhattan, you know, he's different. He's developed way more of an ontology ontology, like the study of God. Like it's way developed. Why is it way developed? Because he's got to deal with his guilt. He's got to deal with his feelings regarding God and being a Jew. So you have to have a very developed perspective, quite philosophical if you're Ashkenazi, on how you've somehow philosophized God a little bit out of the picture. Whereas if you live in the land of Israel, you're just going to be altogether different because it's Godland. This is Godland. You've heard of Disneyland? Yeah, this is Godland. And if you want to live in Godland without God, you're going to be a funky dude. Or a dudette if you're female. Now, that's Netzach. Netzach is your ability to keep going. So I have a very strong midas in Netzach. That attribute for me is undamaged at all. It's super strong. So like, for example, I'm in contact with students of mine from 20 years ago and more regularly because I never, ever, because I'm careful with Tiferes, I'm very careful with my relationships, that I stay in relationships if I'm in a relationship, it never, ever goes away. Ever. The same relationships I've had all my life are still there. I can WhatsApp people from 40 years ago, plus. I sent a Facebook message to my skateboard partner. We used to skate together when we were 13. And so he got a Facebook message this week. I was just thinking about him. I was watching some of the more radical surf maneuvers in the Pro Tour today. And when I transitioned from skating to surfing, he said it wasn't radical enough for him because he was really radical. He had a half pipe in his backyard that didn't even have a transition. Half pipes are, it's the steep wall, and then it's a transition, and then the other steep wall. His had no transition. It was just a circle or a semicircle, which means you have no time to set up your maneuvers. But he somehow had them set up. He was amazing. But he said surfing wasn't radical enough. So I have not sent a message I haven't had one communication with this guy in 38 years. But I remembered his name, and I sent him a Facebook message saying that whenever I see someone now doing aerials on surfboards, really getting radical maneuvers, I said, I think of you each time. I should check my messages. Maybe message me back. I don't use Facebook messaging much, so I'll take a look. Remind me to see if Brendan Murdoch's in my Facebook messages. Anyway, sorry if I'm getting a little off. Well, that's the thing, is that I'm really good at Netzach, but what's its partner? Anyone know Netzach's partner or counterpart? It's called Hod. And Hod is focus, laser beam focus. And I've got very little of that. I'm damaged on Hod. That's where I'm damaged goods. I got a lifetime of work of staying focused. That's Hod. And what do I mean by focus? So Netzach just keeps going. If you shine a flashlight into the night air, like a regular flashlight into the night air, does it keep going? Of course it keeps going, but it also what? Scatters. So you can see the beam for a little while, but it's gone pretty soon. What's another kind of flashlight where you see the beam? The limit's only your eyes, not the beam. What is it? Laser beams. Laser beams are this thing that's just kind of focusing in on itself as it goes. And the limitation of its beam is not you. It's not it's you being able to still see it as it continues into space. And so there's certain people who have laser beam focus, and they really stay on task. And what's interesting about those people is they don't necessarily have Netzach. So they'll stay on task, but the task may change. They may go from task to task. They could go from job to job. Someone who goes job to job, or they're observant today and they're not observant tomorrow, and then they're observant the next day and then they're not observant the next day after that, their midas and Netzach is pretty lousy. They don't stick with things. I get people commenting to me, why am I still surfing and mountain biking? As a rabbi, I'm a Hasidic, and I'm also decades later, and why am I still totally invested in these things? And the answer is I'm not. I just have a very strong midas and Netzach. So I loved it then. I still love it, and I still do it. When I take something, I start it, and I don't stop. My wife and I just had last week we had our 25th wedding anniversary. But it's really 28 years because I noticed her when I was a yeshiva bacher. And I noticed her as someone who really, I would share my life with that person. And so, of course, I was a good yeshiva boy and didn't have a lot of contact with her. But you know, when I studied in yeshiva, when the rabbi said it's time to date, I said, okay, I'm ready to date. If you say I'm ready, I'm ready. So I'll date. But I'd like to start with this particular person. And I never dated anyone else. I dated her and married her. And so that's because my midas and Netzach super strong. But the fact that I could come home late perpetually is a lack of which attribute? Code. You're staying focused. Because I'll get some SOS, the phone rings, I'm like literally walking up the street to my door. And I'm there, you know, I'm going to be on time and everything. And phone rings, and it's someone in some serious situation, and it's time sensitive, and it's got to get dealt with now. I'll deal with it. And you know, I'll deal with the consequences later for walking in the house at 7 or 7:15 or 8 instead of 6:30 when dinner is. So, because my midas hahod is not great, but my midas Netzach is very strong. But someone who's in and out of relationships, in and out of their Judaism, in and out of jobs, in and out of this, in and out of that,